I'm Mel, and in today's video I'd like to go over this parallax animation and particularly how to make this in Photoshop and After Effects. In Photoshop I'll go over some things to keep in mind during the arc process and how to prepare the layers. And there are multiple ways to make a parallax in After Effects, so I'll show the beginner method and a more complex one that'll make for a smoother animation and better workflow. Okay, so let's dive in. A brief backstory. A parallax effect can be used to create a feeling of depth. It's dynamic and it looks pretty cool. Yeah. The word originally came from the Greek word parallaxis, and this sounds like a cool villain name, but it just means the alteration of an object's position in relation to the background. If you right now look around you and move left and right or up and down, from your perspective, objects closer to you seem to move faster than the background. Or imagine you are in a moving car or a moving train. The bushes, poles and things that are close to you, they zoom by, but the hills all the way to the horizon almost seem still. Alright, so let's open Photoshop. So the canvas in Photoshop needs to be wider than what the final shot is going to be. Else the layers will be cut off and that just looks kind of awkward. I'll start with my regular size canvas and I go to image, then canvas size. There are a couple of different metrics you can use, but as I don't care about precise pixel count for this, I use percentage, because I find that easier to visualize in my head. You can also just start off with a wider canvas when you make the document. By the way, if you have already drawn your image and you only realize later that your canvas needs to be taller or wider, you can use these arrows to tell Photoshop in what direction you want to expand the canvas. And now for the artwork. When drawing the trees, I'm already establishing how many layers of depth the final image is going to need. So I'm grouping trees in terms of distance. This is also a good moment to block in the colors. I'm looking for a few colors that look well together, and I like to make a gradient from light to dark, because that will help with the readability of an image. I add more of the sky color the further away a layer is, to mimic what happens in real life. I like to use a variety of brushes to get some textures in, but some of my go-to brushes have some transparency to them. This doesn't matter in a still image, but since the layers are going to move in relation to each other, it's best if the trees don't have any see-through parts, except if they were like leaves or something. That's why I block the trees with a solid color first. Oh, and a useful thing to know. There's a button here at the top of the layers panel that you can toggle per layer. With this, you lock in the opaque pixels. So if you turn it on and draw over what you blocked in before, it will only paint over what is already in that layer. So okay, this is a shot that I'm actually using for something, so when it comes to drawing the character, I'll load in some references from earlier shots, so I can keep the design as consistent as possible. Okay, I have everything set up. I added these little particles and leaves. I want to make the image less static by giving them a subtle movement as well. It's time to load this all up in After Effects. The cool thing is, we don't have to save all the individual layers and import them separately. We can import the PSD file directly into After Effects, and the program will ask us how we want to import this. I'm importing this into an existing After Effects project because this shot is part of a longer animation video, and as you can see, I'm not the right person to ask about project organization. I understand the theory, but my project folders eventually all look like this when I work on them long enough. Anyway, the Photoshop layers are now After Effects layers, in also the same order. Perfect. Now, of course, the shot is too wide, but that's something we'll solve later. I'll first show you the quick and easy method in case you are very unfamiliar with After Effects and need to get this done this very second. For the proper method, stay tuned or hop to this timestamp. With a parallax effect, the layers closer to the viewer move faster than the layers further away. So we start by selecting the layer that is closest, which is the layer that lies highest in the timeline, and we press P on our keyboard. This opens up the position properties on this layer. There is a stopwatch to click here. This makes a keyframe, basically saying this layer needs to be on this position at this point in the timeline. I'll adjust the position by clicking this number and dragging it left or right until I'm happy. Then I go to the end of the timeline and click and drag this number again to change the position. After Effects now automatically makes a second keyframe and fills in all the positions between those 2 points. Now I'll repeat this for the other layers, and I'll make sure that each layer has a little less movement in it than the previous one. To make the movement a little more natural, we can tell After Effects we want to ease into the movement and ease out of it once the shot gets into its end position. To do this, we select all the layers, press P to reveal all our position keyframes, select them all, and then press F9. And there we go. Quick and easy, but not super clean. So now for the more proper method. So we have all these layers, but we're going to need two extra tools. One is a camera, the other is a null object. There is a button here with which you can toggle multiple views. I'll set it to 2 and change the left view so I can see into 3D space. The other view should be the camera view. It's a 2D animation, but I'm going to use 3D features to create the depth that we need. We can toggle this box here to set a layer to show up in 3D space, even if it's flat. I'll do that for all the layers, including the null object. When we press P for position now, we see that there is a third number, which is the Z space or depth. The problem with moving layers into Z space, however, is that they also appear smaller on our 3D camera, because they are further away. So to push these layers further away, but have them remain optically the same size, we're going to have to scale them up in relation to their distance to the camera. This could be a math formula, but we'll just use the null object we made as a tool. So, we want to make sure that the null object is at exactly the same position as the camera. So to do that, we toggle on the position properties of the camera by pressing P, and we toggle it on for the null as well, and we make sure that we match these numbers. In this case, only the Z-axis is different. Click the number, press Ctrl C or Command C and paste the number on the Z-axis of the null. Alright, now the camera and the null are at exactly the same coordinates. Now we're going to parent and link all the layers to the null object by selecting the layers and dragging this swirly swirl thing here to the null object. If you don't see this, don't worry, you can right click here to toggle columns on and off, so check if parent and link is there. With a parent and link, the child layers take on some properties of the parent layer, like the scaling. So watch what happens. We unlink the layer closest to the camera, and then we go to the null and press S for scale, and we scale it up. It scales on all the 3 axes at the same time. From the top viewpoint, you see that all the layers that are still linked to the null are pushed further into Z space, but they still appear the same size from the camera. Then we unlink the next layer and we scale up the null object again. We repeat this process until all the layers are done. This example shot is a little more complicated than it needs to be, honestly, because I have more than one layer that needs to be at certain depths. The layers are in place now, but we need to do the camera movement. We could use the camera layer itself to move the camera, but if you change the position properties, you see that the camera tends to orbit, which is not good. An easy way around this is to now parent and link the camera to the null object, if you hadn't already done that earlier. We can move the position of the null over any axis and the camera moves with it without turning. The whole effect can now be done with just 2 keyframes. One to the left, where we put the position of the null object to the left, and one at the end. This way it's much easier to make adjustments to the timing than if you animated every single layer separately. We can also quickly add easing by selecting the keyframes and pressing F9. And we can go a bit further by tweaking the movement in the graph editor. Okay, so we are almost done. I'm making a new composition with the actual dimensions that I need the shot to be, and I drag our parallax composition into this one. And that's it. Here's the finished result. If you have any further questions or need me to clarify something, please leave a comment. Have a great day and see you all next time.